Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll start with item 2A, public comment. Do we have any written comments, or is anyone signed up with a request to speak? All right, then we will move on to the next item, which is 3A, consideration of an action on the minutes of the March 23rd, 2023 meeting. The minutes are in your packet. Commissioners, any comments? I've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Landine. Is there a second?
Second. Nope.
I want to give that one to Commissioner Parikh, but y'all very close second and third over here. I've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, please vote. You bet. That's what it looked like she went to go see. Okay, so we've got we're giving a hand vote, yes. All right, so that motion will pass. And while you're doing that, we'll move on to item 4A, which is consideration of an action on a recommendation for the Pearl at Lake Point Final Development Plan to members of the City Council. Good evening, Lauren.
We're gonna get moving here. I don't want to touch it again. There we go. Okay. All right. Hello. We're back this evening for consideration and action on the Pearl at Lake Point. So I don't have too many slides. So we'll wrap this one up. We didn't have a lot of public comment or commissioner feedback last time, so I'll run through some of this just as a reminder before we move into consideration and action. So we are here at Lake Point this evening along Creek Bend Drive, just south of the existing Floor campus, as you can see here in the red circle. So the Pearl at Lake Point, as a reminder, is a multifamily development, 371 and 2-bedroom units, 5 live-work units on the Creek Bend street-facing side, integrated structured parking garage, and then some additional components with some flex co-working office space, meeting space, and then a bunch, about 12,000 square feet of ground floor, non-residential fitness center, the cafe, coffee shop, the leasing office, as well as the dog park on property. So we take a look at the site. This is Floor up here. We're coming down Creek Bend, I guess. So the live work units are here, street facing. This is more of the commercial, the office, and the flex co-working space, some amenities, and then wrapped with the parking garage. The inset down here, if you recall last time we discussed the sort of alternate that was with regard to occupancy rates for the office area, and if they fell below a certain percentage, then the owner could convert those to 5 additional residential units. So that's still part of the plan. And then just a quick reminder on from the land use plan, this is part of the Lake Point Regional Activity Center, which is the area outlined here in the dotted line. Currently includes office, retail, restaurant, a few hotels, the hospital, and then a variety of different residential products. But the addition of the multifamily is one of the residential products that's currently not a component in the Regional Activity Center. So again, creating greater mix of uses, encouraging the more overall walkable area there with Brooks Lake and the pedestrian trails. So recap of the commission's discussion. We were here on March 23rd for public hearing. We did have handful of members from the public that spoke in support of the project. Overall, positive sentiment from the commission regarding the development itself and its location in this regional activity center. There were a couple questions. So there was a request for the copy of the deed restrictions that were mentioned from the applicant. So those were provided with the materials with regards to the permitted uses and what's prohibited and how they classify uses from their private deed restriction standpoint. And then a question regarding the overall multifamily to single family ratio that's in the land use plan. And kind of a question on how many more units could be built. Just kind of recognizing a lot of assumptions go into that number. A lot of assumptions into getting to that unit count and the percentage. So that was also provided in your staff report material. And that's all I have. So without, staff would support a recommendation of approval of the Pearl at Lake Point final development plan to the mayor and city council. And we're happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Lauren. Any questions from any commissioners? No? Anyone? I'm good. All right. I'll move. Then I'll make a motion to make a recommendation of approval to the city council for the Pearl at Lake Point final development plan. I've got a second from Commissioner DeWood. I don't think there will be any discussion. So I'm sorry, Patel. You know, it was anyway, I apologize, from Commissioner Patel. And I doubt there will be any other discussion, but if there is, let's do it now. All right, then let's vote. I was so stuck on the silent A that I just whiffed on the rest. All right. And that passes unanimously among the members present. Thank you. Congratulations. And we will move on to item 4B, consideration of an action on a recommendation for Riverstone General Land Plan Amendment Number 11 to members of City Council. Ruth, hello. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening, commissioners. I am here to talk to you about a proposed amendment to the Riverstone General Land Plan. It's been a while since you, as a commission, have talked about general land plans. We used to do amendments to them all the time, but now where we are in our stage of development, they don't happen very often. And so just wanted to do a quick overview, reminder of what general land plans are. They are established in the subdivision regulations, which is Chapter 5 of our development code. They're intended to guide the design of subdivisions and provide the commission and council the opportunity to review major thoroughfares, land use kind of pods, any environmental issues in relationship to adjoining subdivisions or properties, and conformance to the comprehensive plan. These have traditionally been used in our master planned communities like in Riverstone, which is about 2,100 acres. We've also have one for Telfair and Imperial. The others are in the city. This is in the ETJ, so it is a little bit of a different animal. So the current Riverstone General Land Plan, this is what we have as amendment number 10. And so the area that we're really focusing on is this area right here, which is on the other side of Cabrera from the existing, there's a Kroger shopping center here with some other pizza place and other restaurants and services in there. So it's this area that's currently designated as commercial office. And the proposal is for that to change to urban home or urban patio home residential. So this is about 6 acres of property that would change land uses. And it would be for approximately 34 detached single-family urban homes that would be served by a private street. The lot widths would range between 30 feet and 55 feet. And the buildings themselves could be up to 3 stories, which is 45 feet. Urban homes are not defined in the subdivision regulations, and in the subdivision regulations, it states that private streets can only be approved through a development agreement. So there are additional standards that will be established through a revision to the development agreement. The commission does not review development agreements, and so that's something that will go before the council. And then those regulations would then be provided to you at the time that we come back with plating of the subdivision later, so we can demonstrate that they're in compliance with the regulations that are being set up through the development agreement. So the future land use plan designates this general area as neighborhood activity center or suburban neighborhood, kind of depending on exactly where you draw the line. But medium density single family, including urban homes, are considered appropriate in the neighborhood activity center designation. We also find that this is consistent with the land use plan and the comprehensive plan because it's meets a couple of the goals, particularly goal 2 relating to the activity centers, and goal 3 encouraging residential options. This urban home product is one that doesn't exist in Riverstone, and it really only exists in a couple of other places in the city. There's some up in the Imperial development, and then we also have some in Lake Point. So with that, staff supports the recommendation of approval to the mayor and city council for the Riverstone General Land Plan Amendment number 11.
All right, any questions for staff?
I do. So you're saying that the single-family urban home is not defined, right? And the lot square footage width is 30 feet at a minimum. 45 is it's fine, but at 30 feet, would there be in the development agreement that you're going to put together, which we will not see, would there be any side setbacks?
Yep, so they are proposing side setbacks of 0 feet and 5 feet. So they would be like a patio home on the 0 lot line and then 5 feet on the other side.
So if there are 2 sides to this lot, then one side could be 0 and the other has to be 5?
Correct.
Is that?
Correct.
And then the adjacent one, where there is 0, the adjacent one would have to be 5 then?
Right. Right,
Okay,
and
so-
they'll have to show that on the plat. That's typical with patio
Yeah.
home lots. They'll show which side will be on the 0.
Okay. And that's fine. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Hey, Ruth, piggybacking on that comment, as you were going through, just because you called out that urban homes are undefined, that's undefined, like, so my question to you is, would city staff like the commission to place a definition on whatever we recommend to mayor and city council?
I think it will be defined through the development agreement.
Okay.
So I don't know that that's necessary because we don't have that definition in the standard code. That's really the only way to go about achieving of that. But if you
Yeah.
wanted to say with the understanding or with the condition that it's defined in a development agreement or something, you know,
As long as
but
you guys are comfortable with it. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
didn't want to miss an opportunity to do
Understood.
something very simple at this stage. But as long as y'all are comfortable with it,
Yeah.
then I'm good. Thanks.
okay.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Sure.
So first of all, can you walk us, since the way I'm understanding this is that things like the definition that you just mentioned will be authorized in a development agreement, and staff is working on creating an amendment to the existing development agreement, correct? Can you walk us through that process and what that'll look like and what that'll include?
Sure. So staff is working with the developer to come to terms that everybody agrees on for amending that agreement. And once we have come to those terms, then we will take forward that agreement to city council, and it will be on that same night that they would also review the general land plan amendment. And so those would go in tandem with one another. So you would have the regulations or the parameters for the urban homes established in the agreement at the same time that that general land plan gets approved, so that we have what we need to follow up with plating in the future.
Okay, and the way that this the way that this is captioned is as a minor amendment, number 11. So is the term minor amendment, is that a term of art? What does that mean?
Basically, it means that they are not making substantive or substantial changes to thoroughfares or to like major land uses. This is only 6 acres out of 2,100 acres. So some might even say, do you even need to go through this process to make this amendment for such a small area? But we say, yes, it's just a minor amendment instead of a major amendment.
Okay.
The review process is the same. It's just more gives you an idea of how much is changing within the context. Most of the amendments we have done have been minor amendments, but there have been a couple that have been major amendments because they've realigned where the streets, how they're circulating through that 2,100 acres. And so, I mean, this development, I think the original, I think it's in here, yeah, the original general land plan was approved in 2003. So this is literally a 20-year process that, you know, this development has been going through. So it's, I mean, it's to be expected that you'd see some changes along the way.
Okay, so is the determination of what's minor versus what's not minor, is that basically does it have to do with the amount of area that's under discussion here relative to the whole amount of area in the development?
Yeah, and then also just like how significant is it going to change the traffic patterns? I mean, if you were significantly increasing the intensity of an area, then, you know, we may classify that as a major amendment. But going from kind of commercial office to a single family product is relatively minor in comparison to other changes that could be made.
Okay.
And none of the roads are changing. They're all existing. So.
Okay. That's all I have. Anyone else? Yep.
So I'll make a motion to recommend approval for Riverstone General Land Plan Amendment Number 11 to the mayor and city council.
I'll second. Any other discussion? All right, please vote.
Thank you.
That passes unanimously among the members present. Thank you very much, Ruth. We will move on to item 5, which is consideration of an action on a recommendation for a development code amendment establishing an alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district and proposed rezoning for the existing First Colony Mall development located at 16535, 16529, 16511, 16517 Southwest Freeman and River City Council. We will hear the staff presentation first, and then I will open the public hearing, and we'll move on to questions for staff. So, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, so the alcoholic beverage overlay is back before you guys. So just to provide an overview of what we had discussed during the workshop, overlay districts are special zoning districts overlaid on one or more standard zoning districts that impose additional standards and requirements that may be more or less restrictive than those of the underlying districts. It's important to note that the city currently doesn't have any overlay districts, so this would be the first. But I wouldn't be setting a legal precedent. It would just be the first in the city. Overlay districts are a tool that can be used to meet community goals. And the one that is proposed before you is based and modeled after the Farmers Branch alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district. And Farmers Branch is located north of Dallas, Texas. So currently bars are not permitted in the standard zoning districts, but they may be permitted in a planned development district. Some of the planned development districts that allow for bars or might be identified as drinking places are the Sugarland Town Square FDP, Crossing at Telfair Phase 1 FDP, and then most recently the Imperial Historic District GDP. Bars are defined as facilities that derive more than 50% of their revenue from the sale of alcoholic beverages for consumption on the premises where the same are sold. It's important to note that even though it says bars, that doesn't mean that it doesn't include places like wine bars or tap rooms or cocktail lounges. So just keep that in mind when thinking about the word bar. And to provide some background as to why this request is before you, back in December, Brookfield Properties, the owners of First Colony Mall, approached the city about a new tenant opportunity that they had, Little Woodrow's, who was interested in moving into the space that's currently occupied by Breakers Korean Barbecue and the Lifestyle Center. Because Little Woodrow's is a sports bar and they derive more than 50% of their sales and revenue from alcoholic beverages, they are not permitted in the B2 zoning district. So economic development staff and legal work to find and research what would be an appropriate solution. And economic development staff also vetted the potential opportunity with the Economic Development Committee, and they were in support of finding an appropriate solution to allow this use. So the proposed amendments to the development code include amending where bars are permitted in the land use matrix, which you can see in the image below, and then adding an overlay district table to section 2-51, and then creating a part 8 in chapter 2, article 2 that outlines the regulations for the overlay district. And then the proposed rezoning would be a First Colony Mall. Currently it's zoned General Business District B2, and the proposed rezoning would be to overlay the alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district. So it would go to General Business District B2, alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district. And then as you can see on the map on the right, that's what it would look like. It would still have the standard district underlying, and then the overlay would be placed over it. And so the land use plan, some guidance from that would be the goals. That is a typo. It should be goal 5. But the land use plan outlines 10 goals and then has policies in which guide those goals. Goal 5 is amenities for all, and it states Sugar Land will have amenities in appropriate locations that make it a prominent place to live and work and is attractive to visitors and tourists. And policy 5A states locate destination retail, entertainment, sports, and cultural arts in appropriate places to maintain quality of life for residents. So it states that to have these types of uses that they should be located away from residential where there are buffers, and to have them located near highways, and that appropriate locations are restricted to RACs. And so staff believes that First Colony Mall is an appropriate location for this overlay district because it is located in Sugar Land Town Center RAC, as you can see on the right. It's kind of hard to see, but the red outline is around the First Colony Mall tract, and then the dashed lines show where the Sugar Land Town Center RAC is. And it's envisioned to be a retail and office destination with residential and entertainment as supporting uses. And entertainment includes restaurants, bars, movie theaters, bowling, and city-owned entertainment venues as identified in the land use plan. So one of the concerns during the workshop was the proximity to residential uses. As you can see, the closest residential uses, both single-family detached and multifamily, are over or approximately 500 feet away, and that's measured from property line to property line. And this is the southern corner of the mall tract and the outline of the proposed overlay district. And the lifestyle center is located to the north. So the proposed tenant would be even farther away than 500 feet. So to recap the discussion around the proposed overlay district and rezoning, the workshop were distance separation between uses, including the distance between bars and the distance between bars and government facilities and residential products, and then TABC regulations, traffic, noise decibel levels, internal tenant discussions at the lifestyle center, and then the commission also directed staff to do more research and provide a recommendation on supplemental regulations. So after conducting more research and consulting legal, Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, or TABC, actually precludes municipalities from enacting stricter regulations than what are outlined in it. So staff is not recommending additional supplemental regulations. Staff also doesn't believe that traffic that will be coming from the proposed use will be above and beyond what exists at the mall today. The mall is an existing development, and there are other uses like bowling alleys and stuff that are allowed by right at the mall that would generate more traffic. And the noise regulations are regulated in the Code of Ordinances. It doesn't list a specific decibel level like the noise regulations in the zoning ordinance for industrial uses, but it does say basically that nuisances, noise that create nuisances for residential properties are unlawful. And then additionally, Brookfield Properties does have in their real estate agreement for the lifestyle center that any noise that's considered a nuisance is not permitted. So because this is a public hearing, all of the notification requirements were met. Mailers were sent to owners within 200 feet. The notification was published in the newspaper and on the city's website. And at this time, we have not received any inquiries, and staff is not aware of any opposition. So staff's recommendation is to hold a public hearing followed by consider an action tonight. And staff is supportive of a recommendation of approval to mayor and city council for the proposed development code amendment and rezoning. And then the next steps would be a public hearing and consideration of the ordinance at the April 18th city council meeting.
All right, thank you. At this time, I will open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed amendments to the Development Code for Chapter 2, Article 2, Zoning Districts and Land Uses, establishing an alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district, and proposed rezoning for the existing First Colony Mall development located at 16535, 16529, 16511, and 16517 Southwest Freeway. Do we have anyone here for public hearing? Anyone at all? Last call. All right, I will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to consideration action. Any questions for staff?
First of all, when the notices were they distributed to the condo complex that is in this area? I don't know the name of the complex.
The
but-
condos?
Yes,
No.
but aren't they residences? They're owned by,
So it would be anyone within 200 feet.
so it's not within 200 feet, the
No.
condo? Okay. And then it goes on to say that this Little Woodrow would be allowed to have a beer garden. So is that the space, the green space between Cheesecake Factory and the Korean barbecue?
So that's just going to be an outdoor area for the bar.
So they are allowed to expand into that green space?
That is their proposal, yes.
And so is there any in the underlying district, which you're coming back with the overlay district, in the underlying district, is there any requirement to maintain a green space for outdoor activities or something? And does that compromise if they were allowed to encroach in the green space?
I believe that's in the development agreement.
Hello, my name is Jessica Hubble. I'm with Economic Development. I can speak a little bit to that. So if you recall, the city went into an agreement with the mall to help create that green space, the outdoor green space. So we do have an agreement in place that it's basically based on performance. And so of sales tax entities within that lifestyle center, so the restaurants within there. We did check with legal on if they would be allowed to take down basically a third of it to extend their restaurant, and they are allowed to. It is within the use of the development agreement. The whole purpose of that area is to be activated and to drive attendance and drive people there. So that does fall within an allowable scope. So the development agreement would not need to be amended in any way.
Okay. And then the last question, that it says that while kids are allowed, it will be age 21 and up in late evenings. Is the city not proposing any cutoff time for what is
No.
defined as late evenings?
No.
Huh? So late evening could be any time.
No,
At
so
the
they would have
discretion.
the maximum they can stay open is 2 a.m.
But the cutoff time where it is only for age 21 and above is not going to be defined by Sugar
No,
Land
this was discussed
in
at the
overlay
workshop, and
district.
they have no intention of having it set at a certain time, and so we didn't include that.
But as an overlay district, when you're coming in with an overlay district, not just for
Yes.
Little Woodrow, it could be another outfit that wants to come and have similar use, right?
Yes.
You, as an overlay district, the city staff does not recommend having a cutoff time to where there's under 21 allowed and then over 21.
No, and I don't even know if that would be allowed because of TABC regulations.
That's just time for operation of a certain kind of business.
But aren't you relating it to alcoholic beverages?
Yeah.
So that it would be preempted by TABC regulations.
Well, I think it's a gray area because you're allowing encroachment of the green space, so kids could be there, and then you are not imposing a timeline. So kids could be outside in the 2/3 of the space playing, but then there are these other people that are consuming alcohol, so the two are mixing and they can see each
They
other.
won't be mixing because requirements say that you have to have a barrier around that area. So they wouldn't be mixing.
Okay, so they would be like a fenced.
Yeah, it's required that they have a fence.
Okay. And the last question, that I think when I was reading this, it says that one of the reasons that you're not imposing any further restrictions is because Brookfield has its own set of requirements. Are those requirements business requirements, or are they tied legally to that development? And the reason for this question is that what if Brookfield wants to sell this asset tomorrow? Will those restrictions remain in place, knowing that Sugar Land did not impose any restrictions with the overlay district?
I believe the real estate agreement is between Brookfield and their tenants.
Okay, so what if they were to sell, those restrictions are out the door, or they could at will change it?
Yes, but it's also important to note that the PDs that allow for drinking places don't have any of these regulations. It's all based on the business. It's a
No.
business decision.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think in this package that was given to us, it was referring to Brookfield having good restrictions in place in terms of, controlling noise and not being a nuisance to the adjacent tenant or use, whatever. I'm just questioning that if they were not the owners, or at will if they were to disregard or not enforce their own rules, then, Sugar Land does not have any power to do anything.
So can I try to help with that question?
Yes, please.
So I think what the commissioner is referring to are the reciprocal negative easements. And I think the question is, if there's an ownership change of the property, do those reciprocal negative easements remain in place, or do they go away? Don't they typically run with the land?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys, I don't know if this is a question for staff.
Oh,
Sorry,
they're
this
on.
is
That's right.
James Barstan's from Brookfield.
Brookfield's on.
Properties,
Yeah.
Or the First Colony Law. They run with the land, you're correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So I'm hearing that they stay in place even if there's an ownership change.
Okay, thank
The
you.
voice from on high has told us that.
Sorry, we have the Zoom invite call.
No worries.
I see.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you for the clarification. No further questions.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Brown?
I do, thank you. So did I hear you say a minute ago that there were certain types of alcoholic beverage sale places here, like wine bars and tap rooms, that were not allowed, or are all allowed?
So in PDs, if it's listed in the ordinance, drinking places or bars, whatever it's listed, they would be permitted there, but they're not permitted in the standard zoning districts currently.
Okay.
But they would be allowed if this is placed over the mall, at the mall.
So, but this, by definition, just any establishment that derives more than 51%
Yes.
of its sales would be allowed in
Correct.
this. Perfect. One of my points I brought up during the last time when we revisited this was notification of the
Yes, so
adjacent tenants.
Brookfield said that they would handle that and notify the tenants. I don't know if Brookfield, since they're on, if they want to speak to that.
Right, I appreciate that. And I noticed in the notes that they did notify everybody. But was there any, and if Brookfield's representative is here, was there any other reach outs to those immediate adjacent tenants on this change of use, so to speak, in this overlay district? Did they get any feedback from the owners of those spaces other than a letter in the mail?
We haven't received any feedback from any of the adjacent tenants. I can speak to, we have large relationships with Cheesecake and many of the adjacent tenants. The use is not controversial from a lot of restaurant users' standpoint. It's complementary. It just offers an alternative place for customers to hang out while maybe the wife shops. So we will continue to have sessions with our tenants to answer any questions they have, but we haven't heard any negative feedback about the proposed use.
Yeah, and sir, just for the record, I know you said you were with a representative of Brookfield, but would you please state your name and your title so we just have that in our record, please?
James Barstamis, that's Barstamis, Senior Vice President.
Do you have, Sorry for interrupting. Do you have video capability?
Yeah, I have it on. I don't know why it's not coming across.
We're just trying to make sure we have a good record here, so bear with us, please.
Sure, no problem.
There you are.
There I am.
So continue. No, Matt's front and center.
I knew I was here.
No, I think the use is good. I just wanted to make sure that we had interacted
there
with
we
the
go.
neighbors properly on this, because I think we've seen in some recent some recent things that have been brought before the commission that communication matters, and I just want to make that a point. And other than that, I just want to say that, you know, from the planning perspective of P&Z, I think this is a great addition to Sugar Land and the kind of stuff that I think will revitalize what we have going on in Sugar Land.
So just probably one or two questions. So the way that I understand it, overlay districts are special zoning districts that are overlaid on standard zoning districts, and they can impose additional standards and requirements that are either more restrictive or less restrictive
Correct.
than the underlying district, right?
Correct.
So in some cases, they can be used to expand uses, and in other cases, they can be used to restrict uses.
That is correct.
And the overlay district itself doesn't intrinsically expand a use or limit a use. It just is a tool that is available to be used in certain areas based on whatever the objective is. that wants to
Exactly.
be
It's an
achieved.
alternative to changing the B2 zoning district and allowing bars in all of B2 zoning districts. It's specific to a geographical area.
Okay. And this particular proposal was, as I understood it, was number one, it was vetted by Economic Development
Yes.
through the Economic Development Committee, correct? And
Yes.
they made a recommendation essentially that they endorsed it conceptually, correct?
Yes.
And city staff has looked at this. And the other question that came up at our last meeting was whether or not we needed to add additional regulations. And it's your judgment, based on consultation with TABC and legal, that that does not need to happen, correct?
Exactly. Exactly. We are not allowed to enact any stricter regulations. We can choose what they have laid out, but we can't enact stricter regulations than what TABC provides.
Okay, and notice went out to everyone within 200 feet, and as I understand it, the closest residential is 500 feet, correct?
That's correct.
So they're not within the zone.
Yes.
And you've received no negative feedback at all
None.
to this conceptually? Okay, that's all I've got. Anything else? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval for a development code amendment establishing an alcoholic beverage on-premise overlay district and proposed rezoning for the existing First Colony Mall development located at 16535, 16529, 16511, 16517 Southwest Freeway to the members of City Council.
Second.
I've got a motion from Commissioner Landine. I've got a second from Commissioner Brown. Please vote. All right, that passes unanimously among the members present. Thanks very much, Commissioners. Thank you, staff. And we will move on to item 6A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Report. I believe the March 28th City Council meeting was a workshop. Can someone remind me about that? I think that was mine, and I think it was a workshop. Did anyone cover the April 4th meeting? All right, perhaps that's one of our absent colleagues, so we'll move on to 6B, City Staff Report.
Nothing major to report. Next meeting will be April 27th, and we will have a zoning item that evening, just one item. So we'll do a public hearing and likely request consideration and action that same evening, as you all have seen us kind of trend of doing. So just heads up on that. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll move to adjourn. I've got a second. All in favor? That passes. We're adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everyone.